A billionaire's elderly mother fakes a disability to test her son's cruel fiancé. A week of deception unveils shocking truths that could shatter their family forever. Will love or betrayal win? Before we continue, please do well to hit that subscription button, because it means the world to us. Like and share with friends. Now, relax and enjoy the story. At the edge of the city stood the Thompson family mansion, a sprawling estate of marble and glass that gleamed like a jewel. Inside, billionaire real estate tycoon Michael Thompson, a man in his late 30s, adjusted his tie in the grand foyer, preparing to introduce his fiancée to his mother. The air held a mix of anticipation and tension, as this meeting had been long delayed. Vanessa Carter, a woman in her early 30s known for her extravagant lifestyle and biting wit, stood beside Michael, her designer dress clinging to her frame, diamonds glinting at her throat. Her lips curved in a practiced smile, but her posture betrayed impatience. Michael's mother, Grace Thompson, aged 70, descended the curved staircase with measured steps, her silk shawl draped elegantly over her shoulders. Grace's warm heart and sharp mind had guided Michael through life's challenges, and she approached this introduction with cautious hope. "Mother, this is Vanessa," Michael said, his voice bright but tinged with nerves. He took Vanessa's hand, guiding her forward. "Vanessa, meet my mom, Grace." Grace extended a hand, her smile genuine. "Welcome, Vanessa. I've heard so much about you." Vanessa's handshake was brief, her fingers barely brushing Grace's. "Nice to meet you, Grace," she said, her tone polite but cool. Her gaze flicked over the older woman, then to the chandelier above, as if assessing the mansion's worth. "This place is stunning, Michael. You didn't exaggerate." Michael beamed, missing the subtle dismissal in Vanessa's words. "It's been home forever. Mom's kept it alive with her touch." Grace's smile didn't falter, but she noted Vanessa's lack of warmth. "I'd love to know you better, Vanessa," she said, her voice inviting. "What brought you and Michael together?" Vanessa shrugged, her manicured nails tapping her clutch. "Oh, shared interests. We met at a charity gala in Crestview. Michael's charm won me over." Her laugh was light, but it lacked depth, and she glanced at her watch, signaling boredom. Michael, eager to bridge the gap, gestured to the living room. "Let's sit. Mom, tell Vanessa about your garden. She loves flowers." They moved to the plush sofas, sunlight streaming through tall windows. Grace settled gracefully, her hands folded. "My roses are my pride," she began, her voice soft. "Each bloom takes patience, care. Like family, they need love to thrive." Vanessa's lips twitched, her patience thinning. "That's sweet," she said, her tone clipped. "I prefer store-bought bouquets. Less fuss." She turned to Michael, resting a hand on his arm. "Babe, didn't you say we have dinner plans?" Grace's heart sank, Vanessa's disdain clear. She sensed a woman who valued wealth over warmth, a stark contrast to the values she'd instilled in Michael. As they spoke, Michael's phone buzzed, and he excused himself to take a call. "It's about the deal in Bayport," he said, stepping into the hall. "I'll be quick." Alone with Vanessa, Grace tried again. "Michael's always busy," she said, her voice gentle. "I hope you'll feel at home here, Vanessa. Family means everything to us." Vanessa's smile was tight. "I'm sure I'll manage," she replied, her voice flat. "But let's be real, Grace. You must find this big house a lot to handle at your age. Ever think of, say, a smaller place?" Grace stiffened, the jab cutting deep. "This home holds our memories," she said firmly. "I'm quite content here." Vanessa shrugged, unfazed, and pulled out her phone, scrolling absently. Michael returned, his face lit with excitement. "Great news," he announced. "The Bayport deal needs me in person. I'll be gone a week, but it's a game changer." Grace's mind raced. A week alone with Vanessa offered a chance to see her true nature. "A week?" she said, her voice calm but probing. "Vanessa, will you stay here while Michael's away?" Vanessa's face fell, but she masked it quickly. "Sure, why not?" she said, her tone forced. "It'll be cozy." Michael hugged his mother, oblivious to the undercurrent. "Thanks for welcoming Vanessa, Mom. I know you'll get along." As they left for dinner, Grace stood at the window, watching their car disappear. Her warm heart hardened with resolve. Vanessa's coldness was a red flag, and Grace decided to test her. She'd pretend to be a frail, wheelchair-bound invalid, forcing Vanessa to reveal her true character. The stage was set for a week of deception. The morning after Michael's departure, the Thompson mansion felt quieter, its grandeur tinged with tension. Grace sat in her bedroom, a wheelchair borrowed from a friend positioned beside her. Margaret, her loyal housekeeper in her 50s, fussed with the chair's cushions, her face etched with concern. "Are you sure about this, Mrs. Thompson?" Margaret asked, her voice low. Pretending to be helpless, "It's a big risk." Grace nodded, her expression resolute. "I need to know who Vanessa is, Margaret. For Michael's sake. She showed no heart yesterday. This will prove if she's fit to join our family." Margaret sighed, adjusting Grace's shawl. "I'll help, but I don't trust that woman. She's all flash, no substance." Grace patted Margaret's hand. "Keep watch, my dear. Tell me everything she does." Downstairs, Vanessa lounged in the dining room, sipping coffee and scrolling through her phone. The staff moved quietly, sensing her sharp temper. When Margaret wheeled Grace in, Vanessa glanced up, her lips pursing. "Morning, Grace," she said, her voice lacking warmth. "You're up early." Grace leaned back in the chair, her hands trembling slightly for effect. "I'm not as spry as I was," she said, her tone frail. "This chair helps, but I'll need assistance this week. I hope it's not too much trouble." Vanessa's smile was thin, her patience visibly fraying. "No trouble at all," she lied, setting her phone down. "But the staff can handle that, right? I'm not exactly a nurse." Margaret's jaw tightened, but she stayed silent, pushing Grace's chair to the table. Grace reached for a glass of water, her hand slipping to test Vanessa's reaction. The glass tipped, water spilling across the tablecloth. "Oh dear," Grace gasped, her voice weak. "I'm so clumsy." Vanessa rolled her eyes, grabbing a napkin. "It's fine," she snapped, tossing it over the spill. "Margaret, clean this up, will you?" Margaret moved swiftly, her face neutral but her loyalty to Grace burning. "Of course, Miss Carter," she said, mopping the table. Under her breath, she muttered, "No manners at all." Grace kept her expression pitiful, but her mind catalogued Vanessa's callousness. "Thank you, Margaret," she said softly. "Vanessa, perhaps you could help me to the garden later? Fresh air does wonders." Vanessa's face twitched with irritation. "Sure, whatever," she said, her tone dismissive. "But I'm planning a party tomorrow. Crestview's best will be here. You'll stay out of the way, right?" Grace's heart stung, but she nodded meekly. "Of course, dear. I wouldn't want to bother your guests." Vanessa smirked, satisfied, and returned to her phone. Margaret wheeled Grace to the living room, her voice a whisper. "She's heartless, Mrs. Thompson. Planning a party while you're sick? It's shameful." Grace's lips pressed into a line. "She's showing her true self, Margaret. Keep an eye on her. I want to know every detail." That afternoon, Vanessa barked orders at the staff, arranging caterers and decorators for her lavish party. She ignored Grace, leaving her in the living room with only a maid for company. Grace, feigning fatigue, asked the maid to fetch a blanket, then slipped a small notebook from her shawl, jotting down Vanessa's actions. "No care, no kindness," she wrote, her resolve hardening. Margaret returned, her face grim. "She told the chef to skip your special diet, Mrs. Thompson," she reported. "Said it's too much work. I fixed it, but she's not even trying." Grace nodded, her voice steady. "She thinks I'm a burden. Let's see how far she goes." As evening fell, Vanessa swept past the living room, her heels clicking. "I'm heading out," she called, not glancing at Grace. "Don't wait up." Grace watched her go, her frail act perfect but her mind sharp. Vanessa's party would be her next test, a chance to expose her cruelty to others. With Margaret's help, Grace would observe, record, and build her case. The week had just begun, but Vanessa's mask was already slipping, revealing a woman unfit for the Thompson family. The Thompson mansion in Crestview, Lamora, pulsed with the energy of Vanessa Carter's extravagant party. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over the grand ballroom, where Crestview's elite mingled, their laughter and clinking glasses filling the air. Waiters wove through the crowd, offering trays of delicate hors d'oeuvres, while a live band played upbeat melodies. Vanessa, resplendent in a sequined gown, held court near the marble fireplace, her voice loud and confident as she charmed the city's wealthiest. The mansion, usually a haven of quiet elegance, felt like a stage for her ambition. Grace Thompson, confined to her wheelchair as part of her deception, sat in a dimly lit corner of the room. Vanessa had reluctantly wheeled her there, her impatience evident in the way she'd shoved the chair into place. "Stay here, Grace," she'd said, her tone sharp. "Don't make a scene." Grace, feigning frailty, nodded meekly, her hands folded in her lap, but her keen mind observed every detail. The guests, dressed in tailored suits and shimmering dresses, cast occasional glances her way, their expressions a mix of pity and discomfort. Margaret, the loyal housekeeper, hovered nearby, her face tight with disapproval. She adjusted Grace's shawl, whispering, "This is disgraceful, Mrs. Thompson. She's treating you like furniture." Grace's lips pressed into a thin line, her voice low. "Let her show herself, Margaret. Keep watching." As the party swirled around them, Grace's presence was ignored. No one offered her food or drink, and Vanessa made no effort to include her. A young waiter, noticing Grace's empty hands, approached hesitantly. "Ma'am, can I get you something?" he asked, his voice kind. Before Grace could respond, Vanessa swooped in, her smile forced. "She's fine," she snapped, waving him away. "Don't bother her." The waiter retreated, and Vanessa leaned close to Grace, her voice a harsh whisper. "Don't draw attention, Grace. This night's about me." Grace's heart ached, but she maintained her frail act, her hands trembling slightly. "I'd just like some water," she said, her tone weak. Vanessa rolled her eyes, grabbing a glass from a passing tray and thrusting it into Grace's hands. "Here, be careful with it." She turned back to her guests, laughing loudly at a banker's joke, her dismissal clear. Grace, seizing the moment to test Vanessa further, let her hands slip, the glass tilting. Water splashed onto the floor, the glass clattering against the wheelchair. The noise cut through the chatter, and heads turned. Grace gasped softly, her voice quivering. "Oh, I'm so sorry. My hands aren't steady tonight." Vanessa's face twisted with irritation. She stormed over, her heels clicking sharply. "Can't you do anything right?" she hissed, loud enough for nearby guests to hear. "You're embarrassing me, Grace. Just sit still." The room fell quiet, guests exchanging shocked glances. A woman in a silk dress murmured to her companion, "That's Michael's mother." "How awful." Another guest, a prominent lawyer, frowned, his discomfort palpable. Grace kept her head bowed, her expression pitiful, but her resolve strengthened. Vanessa's cruelty was now public, and the test was working. Margaret, standing discreetly near a pillar, slipped her phone from her apron, recording the outburst. She caught Vanessa's harsh words and the guests' reactions, her loyalty to Grace driving her to document the truth. Vanessa, oblivious, snapped her fingers at a maid. "Clean this mess," she ordered, then returned to her circle, her charm resuming as if nothing had happened. Later, in Grace's bedroom, Margaret played the recording, her voice trembling with anger. "She's heartless, Mrs. Thompson. Everyone saw it. What kind of woman treats you like that?" Grace's chest tightened, the hurt raw but her determination fiercer. "She's shown her true nature, Margaret. But I'm not done. Tomorrow, I'll ask for her help with something personal. Let's see how she handles it." The next morning, Grace rang the bell by her bedside, summoning Vanessa. When Vanessa appeared, her face was sour, her silk robe loosely tied. "What now, Grace?" she asked, her tone impatient. Grace, propped up in bed, spoke softly. "I need help bathing today. My arms are too weak. Could you assist me?" Vanessa's expression turned to disgust, her nose wrinkling. "Bathe you? That's what the staff's for," she said, her voice dripping with disdain. "I'm not a caregiver, Grace. Deal with it." She turned to leave, calling over her shoulder, "Margaret, handle this." Margaret, entering with a tray of tea, heard the exchange and shot Grace a knowing look. "I'll help you, Mrs. Thompson," she said, her voice calm but firm. As Vanessa's footsteps faded, Margaret muttered, "She's no good for this family." Grace nodded, her voice resolute. "She's proving that herself. Keep recording, Margaret. Michael needs to see this." The staff, already overworked by Vanessa's demands, grumbled as they took on Grace's care. Grace felt a pang of guilt for burdening them, but knew the test was necessary. Vanessa's refusal to help, her callous delegation, was another nail in the coffin of her facade. The mansion's garden bloomed with vibrant roses, a testament to Grace's love for nurturing life. 2 days after the party, Dorothy Wilson, Grace's longtime friend, arrived for a visit. Her warm presence a balm to the house's tension. Dorothy, a retired teacher with a knack for reading people, had been briefed on Grace's deception and agreed to play along. She found Grace in the garden, still in her wheelchair, a blanket over her lap. "Grace, my dear," Dorothy said, bending to hug her. "You're holding up well, considering." Her tone was sympathetic, but her wink signaled she was in on the ruse. Grace smiled faintly, her voice weak for Vanessa's benefit, who lounged nearby on a patio chair, scrolling through her phone. "It's hard, Dorothy, but I manage." Vanessa glanced up, her lips pursing. "She's got plenty of help," she said, her tone dismissive. "No need to fuss." Dorothy raised an eyebrow, settling beside Grace. "Help is one thing, Vanessa, but family's another. Grace raised Michael alone, you know? Gave up everything for him. Her career, her dreams. That's love." Vanessa shrugged, her voice bored. "That's nice, but I'm not into sacrifices. Michael's got enough for all of us." She stood, stretching. "I'm going inside. Too hot out here." As Vanessa sauntered away, Grace overheard her muttering to a maid. "Once we're married, I'll control his accounts. No more wasting money on this old house, or her." Grace's heart sank, the words confirming her fears. Dorothy squeezed her hand, her voice low. "She's after his wealth, Grace. You were right to test her." Grace nodded, her resolve hardening. "I need to protect Michael. She'd ruin him." Dorothy leaned closer, her tone probing. "What's next? You can't keep this up forever." "I'll stage a health scare," Grace whispered. "If she fails that, it's proof enough." Meanwhile, in Bayport, Michael sat in his hotel room, reviewing contracts for his real estate deal. His phone buzzed with a message from Margaret. "Things aren't right at home, sir. Check on your mother soon." The cryptic words stirred unease, clashing with Vanessa's cheerful calls about party plans. Michael frowned, his gut telling him something was wrong. "I'll be back in a few days," he texted Margaret. "Keep me posted." Back at the mansion, Vanessa planned another outing, ignoring Grace's needs. Grace, wheeled into the living room by Margaret, asked Vanessa to join her for tea. "Just a quiet chat, dear," Grace said, her voice frail. "It would mean so much." Vanessa sighed, her irritation clear. "Fine, but make it quick. I've got plans." She sat, crossing her arms, her body language screaming disinterest. Dorothy, still present, steered the conversation to Michael's childhood. "Grace worked 2 jobs to send him to school," she said, her voice warm. "She'd walk miles to save bus fare. All for him." Vanessa's lips curled. "That's sweet, but Michael's past doesn't change our future. He's got me now." Her words dripped with entitlement, and Grace's heart ached for her son's blindness. As Vanessa left, Dorothy shook her head. "She's cold, Grace. Michael deserves better." Grace's voice was firm. "He will have better. I'll make sure of it." That evening, Grace planned her next move, a staged medical emergency to test Vanessa's compassion. Margaret, ever loyal, prepared to assist, her phone ready to capture the truth. Vanessa's cruelty, now witnessed by guests and staff, was undeniable, but Grace needed one final act to seal her case before Michael's return. The Thompson mansion in Crestview, Lamora, stood silent under a late afternoon sky, the calm before a storm. Grace Thompson, still committed to her deception as a frail invalid, sat in her wheelchair in the living room, a knitted blanket draped over her lap. Her test of Vanessa Carter, her son Michael's fiancée, had revealed a heart devoid of compassion, but Grace needed one final act to cement her case. Vanessa's cruelty at the recent party had shocked guests, and now Grace planned a dramatic health scare to push her to the limit. Margaret, the loyal housekeeper, stood nearby, her face tense but ready to assist in the ruse. Vanessa lounged on a velvet sofa, flipping through a fashion magazine, her manicured nails tapping impatiently. The staff, weary from her endless demands, moved quietly through the house. Grace took a deep breath, her hands trembling for effect, and let out a sharp gasp, clutching her chest. "Oh, my heart!" she wheezed, her voice weak and strained. She slumped in the wheelchair, her breath shallow, her face contorted in feigned pain. Vanessa glanced up, her lips pursing in annoyance. "What's wrong now, Grace?" she asked, her tone sharp. She set the magazine down, crossing her arms. "You're always making a fuss." Grace gasped again, her hand pressing harder against her chest. "It hurts," Can't breathe, she whispered, her voice barely audible. Please, call help. Vanessa rolled her eyes, standing slowly. You're faking it, aren't you? She said, her voice dripping with disbelief. This is just another way to ruin my day. She paced, her heels clicking on the marble floor, making no move toward the phone. Margaret, watching from the doorway, stepped forward, her voice urgent. Miss Carter, she needs a doctor now, she said, her hands clenched. She moved to Grace's side, adjusting the blanket to maintain the act. I'm calling Dr. Harris. Vanessa waved a hand dismissively. Fine, do it, she snapped. But if this is a stunt, I'm not playing along. She turned away, muttering, such a drama queen. Margaret dialed Dr. Harris, a trusted physician aware of Grace's deception, and spoke in hushed tones. Within minutes, an ambulance arrived, its siren piercing the quiet. Paramedics, also briefed, gently lifted Grace onto a stretcher, their movements professional but part of the charade. Vanessa followed reluctantly, her face a mask of irritation rather than concern. At Crestview Medical Center, Dr. Harris, a calm and authoritative figure, met them in a private room. Grace lay in a hospital bed, an oxygen mask over her face for effect, while Margaret stood by, her loyalty unwavering. Vanessa hovered near the door, checking her phone. Dr. Harris approached her, his voice grave. Miss Carter, Grace's condition is serious. Her heart's under strain. Neglect could make things worse. She needs close care this week. Vanessa shrugged, her voice cold. She's always complaining, she said, barely glancing up. The staff can handle it. I've got enough to deal with. Dr. Harris's jaw tightened, but he nodded, maintaining the ruse. I'll speak to her family, he said, excusing himself. Margaret shot Vanessa a look of disgust before following the doctor, leaving Vanessa alone with her indifference. Back at the mansion that evening, Grace recovered in her bedroom, propped up on pillows. Margaret closed the door, her voice low. She didn't even flinch, Mrs. Thompson. Not a shred of worry. I've never seen someone so heartless. Grace's chest ached, not from her fake ailment, but from Vanessa's cruelty. It hurts, Margaret, she admitted, her voice soft. To think Michael loves her, she'd destroy him. But I won't stop. Not until he sees the truth. Margaret nodded, pulling out her phone. I recorded her at the hospital, she said, playing the clip. Vanessa's dismissive words echoed, clear evidence of her neglect. This will help when Michael's back. Grace's resolve hardened. Keep it safe, she said. Vanessa's shown enough. One more push, and Michael will know who she really is. Vanessa, downstairs, berated the staff in the kitchen. You all overreacted, she snapped, her voice loud. That old woman's fine, and you made me waste my day. Get back to work. The staff exchanged glances, their resentment growing. But they obeyed, their loyalty to Grace fueling their patience. Grace, overhearing the outburst through an open window, closed her eyes, steeling herself for the final days of her test. Michael's return loomed, and Vanessa's true nature was now undeniable. The mansion's gardens bloomed with vibrant roses, a testament to Grace's love for beauty, but the air held a quiet tension. James, the kind-hearted gardener, trimmed hedges near the patio, his hands steady despite the unease he felt. He'd witnessed Vanessa's mistreatment of Grace since Michael's trip began, her harsh words and neglect grating against his gentle nature. James, a man of quiet strength, had cared for his own sick mother years ago, and Grace's frailty stirred his protective instincts. Grace sat in her wheelchair on the patio, a book in her lap, her act as a helpless invalid still in place. Vanessa had ignored her all morning, leaving her without breakfast until Margaret intervened. James, pausing his work, approached Grace, his voice warm. Need anything, Mrs. Thompson? He asked, wiping sweat from his brow. It's a fine day for a garden stroll. Grace smiled, her voice frail for Vanessa's benefit, who was nearby, speaking loudly on her phone. That's kind, James, she said softly. Maybe later. I'm a bit weak today. James nodded, his expression softening. My mom was sick for years, he said, his tone low. I know how hard it can be. You're strong, though I can tell. Grace's heart warmed, sensing an ally. You cared for her yourself? She asked, her voice genuine. James leaned on his rake, his voice steady. Every day? Fed her, read to her. It wasn't easy, but love makes it worth it. He glanced toward Vanessa, who laughed loudly, oblivious. Not everyone understands that. Grace seized the moment, her voice a whisper. James, I'm not as weak as I seem. I'm testing Vanessa. She's shown no heart. Will you help me? James's eyes widened, but he nodded, his resolve firm. I'm in, Mrs. Thompson. She's no good for Mr. Michael. What do you need? Set small traps, Grace said, her voice low. Leave things out of reach, like my medicine. See how she reacts. Record it if you can. James agreed, slipping his phone from his pocket. I'll start now, he said, moving to the garden shed. He placed Grace's medication, sugar pills for the ruse, on a high shelf in the living room, where Vanessa would notice her struggling. Later, Grace wheeled herself inside, her hands shaking as she reached for the pills. Vanessa, dear, she called, her voice weak. My medicine's up there. Could you grab it? Vanessa, lounging on a couch, sighed heavily. Can't you wait? She snapped, her voice sharp. I'm busy. She glanced at the shelf, then back at her phone, ignoring Grace's plea. Grace persisted, her voice quivering. Please, I need it now. My heart. Vanessa stood, her face twisted with impatience. You're such a burden, she yelled, storming over. Instead of helping, she grabbed the bottle and tossed it onto Grace's lap. There. Stop whining. James, watching from the doorway, recorded the outburst, his heart heavy. He slipped the phone back into his pocket, joining Grace later in the garden. Got it, he whispered, showing her the clip. Vanessa's harsh words echoed, clear proof of her neglect. Grace's resolve strengthened. Thank you, James, she said, her voice firm. This will open Michael's eyes. Meanwhile, in Bayport, Michael's phone buzzed with another message from Margaret. Come home soon, sir. Your mother needs you. His unease grew, Vanessa's cheerful updates clashing with Margaret's warnings. Something's off, he muttered, booking an earlier flight. His trip was nearly over, and the truth awaited. Back at the mansion, Vanessa planned another lavish outing, dismissing Grace's needs. James and Margaret exchanged a glance, their loyalty to Grace uniting them. Grace, in her wheelchair, prepared for the final test, her heart heavy but her mission clear. Vanessa's cruelty, now documented, would soon face Michael's judgment. The Thompson mansion in Crestview, Lamora, glowed softly under the evening sky, its grandeur a quiet backdrop to the storm brewing within. Grace Thompson, still playing the frail invalid, had orchestrated her final test for Vanessa Carter, her son Michael's fiancée. The week of deception had exposed Vanessa's cruelty, and now, on the eve of Michael's return, Grace planned a quiet dinner to bond, aiming to unmask Vanessa's greed once and for all. The dining room, set with fine china and flickering candles, held an air of anticipation as Grace sat in her wheelchair, a shawl draped over her shoulders, her resolve unbreakable. Margaret, the loyal housekeeper, adjusted the table settings, her face tense but supportive. Everything's ready, Mrs. Thompson, she whispered, her voice low. James is nearby, watching. You sure about this? Grace nodded, her voice steady. It's the last step, Margaret. Vanessa's shown no heart. Tonight, she'll face the truth. Vanessa swept into the room, her extravagant gown shimmering, her heels clicking on the polished floor. Expecting an easy evening, her lips curved in a forced smile. Grace, this is sweet, she said, her tone patronizing as she Saturday dinner just for us? You're full of surprises. Grace's expression remained gentle, her hands folded in her lap. I wanted us to talk, Vanessa, she said, her voice soft. Michael's coming home tomorrow. I'd like to know the woman he loves. Vanessa's smile tightened, her fingers toying with a wine glass. What's to know? She said, her voice light but guarded. Michael and I are perfect together. He's got the wealth, I've got the style. Grace leaned forward, her tone probing. Wealth matters, but what about love? What do you cherish in my son? Vanessa shrugged, her voice casual. He's charming, successful. He gives me everything I want. Diamonds, trips, you name it. Love's just part of the deal. Grace's heart ached. Vanessa's shallow words confirming her fears. She pressed further, her voice calm but pointed. Michael's built a life on hard work, like I taught him. Family means sacrifice, loyalty. What would you give for him? Vanessa laughed, a sharp sound that echoed in the room. Sacrifice? I'm not into that, Grace. Michael's got enough for both of us. Once we're married, I'll handle his accounts, make sure we live big. This house, though, it's too old. We'll sell it. Grace's chest tightened, but she kept her frail act, her hands trembling for effect. This home holds our memories, she said, her voice weak. You take that from him? Vanessa rolled her shoulders, dismissive. Memories don't pay bills, Grace. Michael will see it my way. Sensing the moment, Grace orchestrated her final test. As Margaret cleared plates, Grace slipped from her wheelchair, her body slumping to the floor with a soft thud. Oh, help, she gasped, her voice quivering, her hands clutching the chair. Vanessa's eyes widened, but instead of rushing to help, she burst into laughter, her voice cruel. Really, Grace? Falling now? You're pathetic. She stood, hands on hips, making no move to assist. Margaret and James, watching from the doorway, tensed, their loyalty to Grace burning. Grace, seizing the moment, dropped her act. She rose slowly, standing tall, her shawl falling to the floor. Vanessa's laughter died, her face paling with shock. What, how? She stammered, stepping back. Grace's voice was firm, her presence commanding. I've been testing you, Vanessa. I'm not frail. I wanted to see your heart, and you've shown none. You've neglected me, mocked me, planned to steal my son's wealth. You failed as family. Vanessa's jaw dropped, her voice rising. You tricked me? That's low, Grace. I'm not some servant to wipe your spills or fetch your pills. Grace stepped closer, her tone unwavering. Family cares, Vanessa. You laughed when I fell. You'd ruin Michael. I won't let that happen. Margaret and James entered, their faces resolute. We saw everything, Miss Carter, Margaret said, holding up her phone. It's all recorded, your words, your cruelty. Vanessa's hands clenched, her voice shrill. Michael won't believe you. I'm his future, not you. Grace's heart ached for her son, but her mission was clear. He'll see the truth, she said, her voice steady. You've shown who you are. The standoff hung heavy, the dining room silent save for Vanessa's ragged breaths. Grace stood tall, her test complete, ready for Michael's return to reveal Vanessa's betrayal. The next morning, the mansion's foyer felt charged with tension, the aftermath of Grace's confrontation lingering. Michael Thompson, unaware of the drama, stepped through the front door, his suitcase in hand, his face weary from his Bayport trip, but eager to be home. Margaret's cryptic messages had gnawed at him, and his early return was driven by a gut feeling that something was wrong. As he entered, he found Grace, Vanessa, Margaret, and James in the living room, the air thick with unspoken conflict. Michael, Vanessa rushed to him, her voice sweet but strained. You're back early. I missed you so much. She wrapped her arms around him, but Michael's gaze fixed on his mother, standing, not in her wheelchair, her expression grave. Mom, what's going on? Michael asked, his voice confused. He stepped back from Vanessa, noting the tension. Margaret's messages worried me. Grace took a deep breath, her voice calm but heavy. Michael, I've got something to show you, she said, gesturing to the sofa. Sit. This won't be easy. Vanessa's face tightened, her voice sharp. She's lying, Michael. Your mother's been faking, trying to trap me. Michael frowned, his hand raised for silence. Let her speak, Vanessa, he said, his tone firm. He sat, his attention on Grace. Grace began, her voice steady. I pretended to be frail this week, using a wheelchair to test Vanessa's heart. I wanted to know if she'd care for me, for our family. She failed, Michael. She neglected me, mocked me, planned to take your wealth. Margaret stepped forward, her phone in hand. It's true, sir, she said, playing recordings. Vanessa's voice filled the room. Her scolding at the party, her refusal to help at the hospital, her laughter when Grace fell. James added his clip, showing Vanessa tossing Grace's medicine callously. Michael's face paled, his heart sinking. Vanessa, is this real? He asked, his voice low, pleading for denial. Vanessa's hands shook, her voice defiant. They're twisting it, Michael. Your mother's manipulative. She set me up. I was stressed, that's all. Grace's voice cut through, gentle but firm. You laughed when I fell, Vanessa. You spoke of selling our home, controlling his money. That's not love. Michael stood, his chest tight with betrayal. Why, Vanessa? He demanded, his voice breaking. I trusted you. I thought you loved me. Vanessa's defiance faltered, her voice desperate. I do love you, but I'm not a nursemaid for your mother. I deserve a life, not her burdens. Michael's jaw clenched, his resolve hardening. You don't deserve my family, he said, his voice cold. We're done. Leave, Vanessa. Now. Vanessa's face crumpled, but she grabbed her purse, her voice bitter. You'll regret this, Michael. You're nothing without me. She stormed out, the door slamming behind her. The room fell silent, the weight of the moment heavy. Grace approached Michael, her hand on his shoulder. I'm sorry, son, she said, her voice soft. I had to protect you. Michael's shoulders slumped, his voice raw. You were right, Mom. She'd have broken us. Thank you for seeing what I couldn't. Grace's heart ached, her victory hollow. I hate that it hurt you, she said, her voice trembling. But you're strong. You'll find real love. Margaret and James exchanged a glance, their loyalty to the family unwavering. Michael hugged his mother, his voice quiet. I'm glad you're okay. No more wheelchairs, please. Grace smiled, her warmth returning. No more, she promised. Just us, moving forward. The mansion felt lighter, Vanessa's absence lifting a shadow. Michael's heart was bruised, but Grace's love had saved him from a loveless future. Together, they faced the dawn, their bond stronger than ever. The Thompson mansion in Crestview, Lamora, felt lighter in the wake of Vanessa's departure, its halls warmed by a renewed bond between Grace Thompson and her son, Michael. Evenings settled over the estate, the living room aglow with soft lamplight as Grace and Michael sat on plush armchairs, a tray of tea between them. The sting of Vanessa's betrayal lingered, but these quiet moments rebuilt their trust. Grace, no longer feigning frailty, held a photo album, her fingers tracing faded pictures. Remember this? Grace asked, her voice gentle, showing a snapshot of a young Michael on a bicycle. You fell 100 times, but kept trying. Michael chuckled, leaning closer. You never let me quit, he said, his tone fond. Always cheering, even when I scraped my knees. Grace's smile deepened, her voice warm. Raising you wasn't easy, Michael. Long nights, 2 jobs, but your smile made it worth it. I wanted you to learn kindness, to value people over things. Michael nodded, his expression serious. I lost sight of that with Vanessa, he admitted, his voice low. She dazzled me, but she lacked heart. I promise, Mom, I'll find someone who shares our values. Grace reached for his hand, her touch reassuring. You will, she said, her voice firm. Love is patient, like tending a garden. It grows with care. Outside, James, the gardener who'd become a trusted friend, worked in the mansion's rose beds, pruning wilted blooms. Grace joined him the next day, her hands in the soil, the act of restoration mirroring her family's healing. These roses are tough, James said, his voice steady, handing her a trowel. Like you, Mrs. Thompson. They come back stronger. Grace laughed, planting a new bud. Thanks to you, James, she said, her tone grateful. This garden's our fresh start. James grinned, his hands dusty. Happy to help, he said. You showed me what family means, standing up for Mr. Michael. Crestview's community, hearing whispers of Vanessa's cruelty, rallied around Grace. Neighbors dropped by with homemade treats, their admiration for her wisdom clear. You're a pillar, Grace, a local baker said, leaving a pie. Grace's strength, once tested, now inspired those around her, cementing her legacy. Months later, the mansion's gardens burst with color, hosting a vibrant community festival to honor Grace's resilience. Tables groaned with food, children darted through the grass, and music floated under a clear Lamora sky. Grace walked proudly among the crowd, her heart full, no trace of her past deception. Michael, healed from his heartbreak, mingled with guests, his laughter genuine. The festival celebrated family, a value Grace had fought to protect. Near the Rose Garden, Michael met Laura, a compassionate teacher volunteering at the event. Her warm smile caught his attention as she helped kids paint signs. You're good with them, Michael said, approaching, his voice friendly. I'm Michael Thompson. Laura wiped paint from her hands, her tone bright. Laura Bennett, she said. Your mom's festival is amazing. She's got such a big heart. Michael nodded, his voice warm. She's our rock, he said. You teach? Must take patience. Laura laughed, her voice soft. It does, but kids teach you back. Kindness, hope. It's why I love it. Grace, watching from a distance, noted Laura's genuine warmth, her approval instant. She joined them, her voice welcoming. Laura, I hear you're a teacher, she said. Michael could use some of your patience. Laura chuckled, her tone respectful. "He seems nice enough, Mrs. Thompson," she said. "This event shows what family means to you." Grace's smile widened, her voice heartfelt. "Family's everything," she said. "You're welcome here anytime, Laura." Nearby, Ethan and Lily, twins from a neighboring family, chased Bubbles, their giggles a reminder of life's joys. Grace knelt beside them, her voice playful. "Caught one yet?" she asked, blowing a bubble their way. Lily clapped, her voice high. "Almost," she squealed, as Ethan tumbled, laughing. Michael and Laura shared a glance, a spark of hope passing between them. Grace stood, her heart swelling. She'd tested Vanessa to protect her son, and now, seeing Michael with Laura, she knew his future was bright. As the festival wound down, Grace walked through the garden, her loved ones around her. Michael's hand brushed Laura's, their connection tentative but real. Grace paused, her gaze on the roses, her voice a whisper. "We're whole again," she said, smiling, her trust and love restored. Thanks for watching. If you find this story interesting, do well to hit the subscription button and turn on the notification bell for our subsequent stories. Don't forget to like and share this video to others. See you in our next story.